Schools to order for April 26, 2022, and we are back in the administration building, which feels surreal and wonderful. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. If any member of the public would like to make an audio or video recording of this meeting, please notify me by raising your hand, either in person or remote, and I will notify the public per the Massachusetts public meeting laws. Do we have anyone who's making a recording today? Let me check our remote attendees. Okay, seeing none. Public comment. Members of the public are welcome to speak about items that are not on the agenda. Comments should be limited to 2 minutes in length. Due to the open meeting law, there will be no debate or action taken on public comment items. For items on the agenda, the chair may accept comments from the public following the committee's discussion of an item. Additional comments and feedback can also be submitted by email to schoolcommittee@falmouth.k12.ma.us. Do we have any public comment? Again, either in person or remote. Also seeing them. I've got the mission and vision. Melissa, I believe you're reading our mission and vision statement.
Sure. Falmouth Public Schools mission. The Falmouth Public Schools creates world-class student learning experiences. Our Clippers are empowered to pursue their goals with curiosity, integrity, and resiliency. Falmouth Public Schools vision. Clippers are creative, inquisitive, and engaged learners who participate in their community as a socially responsible citizen. Clippers effectively communicate and solve problems that impact the world around them.
Thank you, Melissa. Certainly. And Terry, student comments.
Okay, you know me, I love the student comments. Okay, this prompt is what would make your school life better? It's from Ms. DeCosta Advisory at the Lawrence School, grade 8. Looking to change or update dress code. Now that's good because they didn't just say change it, they said update it. So that isn't do away with it, that's good. Give a compromise measure. I'm not supposed to edit for it.
No.
I'm just supposed to be there.
You're just gonna take regular press.
Okay, this is from a Mullen Hall second grader named Gia. How is it going well in your school and what do you like most? Everybody is nice.
Oh, thank you, Gia. Thank you both of our students. Yeah. Okay, so the first item on our agenda relates to the student advisory report, but our wonderful student is very busy and is currently at a softball game. So we will not have Anna joining us this evening for student advisory report. And so we will move right to the introduction of the new Town of Falmouth Council, Maura O'Keefe. Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me here. This is wonderful. My name is Maura O'Keefe. I just started here as town council on March 7th, so I'm still trying to figure out where the pens are kept in my office. If any of you know, if you could just email me, that would be great. I think that maybe some of you or all of you have had a chance to work with Frank Duffy over the years, and I knew him before I started here, and it was one of the reasons why I wanted to come here to this community. But honestly, in the last 2 months, I have grown to learn that I have huge shoes to fill. I really admire the work that Frank's done for this community, and he and I share a philosophy about municipal law, in that I always call myself a community lawyer, because the work that I do on a daily basis really has a direct impact immediately. And I like being there. I like being there on the other side of the phone. I like being there at the other end of the email, or just there in the law department, just waiting. So I just wanted to tell all of you that I want to follow in Frank's footsteps and help you, support you, advise you in the same areas that he has with public records questions or conflict of interest, thoughts you might have. I'm always here to answer questions and to simply listen and help if I can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Laura?
Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Thanks for
Yes.
coming to
Yes.
Falmouth.
Yes.
I don't mean like thanks for coming by. I mean like thanks for coming to Falmouth. Thanks for coming here to Falmouth.
No, thank you for having me here in Falmouth. This really, okay, so I've only been here for 7 weeks, to be very precise, but honestly, this is my dream job. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. So I'm just very, very happy to be here, and thank you for having me here tonight, so.
Thank
you.
Take care. Wonderful. Next on our agenda is a presentation on dropout response plan. Thomas is here with us, the principal.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? Thank you for having me in person. It is nice to be here. Oh, a little screen sharing.
Oh, hold on.
Well, no, I think it's on me. I think it has to be. So.
Good access now.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right, thank you for asking me to come tonight, everyone, and talk about where the graduation rate stands at Falmouth High School currently, and kind of the changing view of what's going on at Falmouth High and what we're doing as a school system to look at that, to address it, to continue to grow and improve as a school. So looking at our demographics first, I think it is really important because they've changed pretty dramatically over the last several years. And so I went with a 4-year strand here just to give us an idea of where we stand in terms of race, in terms of gender, and then we'll also be looking at selected populations, which is something that DESE specifically points out in, if you look at our school profile on the Department of Education website, it's something that they always pull out specific populations of students, the number of students we have that fall into those populations and how they're performing. So if we look, first of all, and again, these are the DESE titles for these different subgroups for race, gender, and the selected subgroups, not just things I picked out of the blue. So when we look specifically at our African-American or Black students, that has grown over the last years from 4.5% of our population to 6%. We're seeing, rapid growth in the diversity of our students, which is a wonderful thing for Falmouth and for Falmouth High, I believe. Our Asian population has dropped, just by very little, by 1%. What DESE calls our Hispanic or Latino population has grown by more than 3% over the last 4 years, which again is wonderful to see. Our Native American population or Indigenous population has fallen a little bit from 1.4% to 0.5% this year. Our white population has also dropped at Falmouth High School from 81.7% in 2018-19 to 79.4%. And then our multi-race non-Hispanic or Latino population has dropped, again, very little from 5.1%. It did grow a bit, and then we see that it's down at 4.7% currently. If we look at our breakdown of gender at Falmouth High School, we're staying relatively the same or around the same between males and females. Female population currently is a little lower, and we know that ebbs and flows. Males has grown a little bit. And then we get the addition of the non-binary population that's counted, which right now it's still just below 1%, but right around 1% for this year. So we are seeing growth there as well since DESE started collecting those statistics. I'm going to fill time while I try and move my slide around here. Oh, there. It's just a little lag. Okay, so again, these are the selected populations I was talking about a minute ago. And I think this is really important data to start looking at as we're talking about the demographics of our school and our school community. Our English language learner population has grown, and when we look at this number, it might look like a small number, 2.1% to 3.4%. But if you think about that growth for a minute, just over 4 years, it's pretty stunning. And we're seeing that in the school. And especially as we look at this year, we saw a number of students coming from Brazil. Usually we see that number spike up sometime in the winter, January, February. We were seeing it, look at these numbers much earlier this year, October, November, and it's really carried through up until today. Our students with disabilities also has grown really substantially. If we look at this, 12.2% of students were on IEPs in 2018, 2019, and currently we have 18.8% of our students on IEPs. Our high needs population, which is an amalgamation of many different statistics that DESE puts together to figure out what determines high needs, but it really is what it says on the tin there. These are students who, judging by their demographics, have higher needs than maybe some others. We went from 30.9% and we've grown by more than, or right around 15% there, 45.6% in just 4 years. And then our economically disadvantaged or low income, you will see this called two different things on the Department of Education website. Historically, it was low income. For, I believe it was 3 years, they changed the verbiage over to economically disadvantaged, which took in more data and information. And this year, all of a sudden, it's back to low income. And doing a little research, it sounds like they're pulling the same statistics and numbers, but what it does is it gives the opportunity for greater Chapter 70 funding under the federal government when they're using the term low income. So that's why you see it called two different things. I'm going to play the game again where I hit it and it doesn't do anything for a second, then I go 7 slides ahead. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to hit it earlier next time when I'm almost done. So these are the sad numbers here, and the ones that keep me up at night. I know keep a lot of teachers up at night because we look at our students and we ask, what can we be doing better? And if we look over the last 3 years, our dropout rate, we're starting to see a trend of growth here. And it's one that is moving in the wrong direction. We were at a really nice place, hovering right around 2% in 2018-19. And the 2020-2021 year, last year, we hit a high over these last 3 years of 2.7%. I really, as I was looking at these numbers, and this was a task I took on personally in February when they were released, I got really curious about what that meant for our students and what it looked like at Falmouth High School. And so I really wanted to dive into those selected populations as well. We see that our English language learners, it's a really interesting, and I don't mean to use the word like interesting when we're talking about students. That's really hard for me, but we're talking about the numbers right now. And we see we were at 0%, we spiked up to 9% last year, the year before last, and then back down to 0. And I don't know the answer to that question of why that number spiked so rapidly. When we are talking about 2.5% of our population in that 1920 year, that 9% is somewhere around 2 students. And so we lost none and then we lost 2, but it's still 2 students. And that's nothing I take lightly. Those may have been students that left for work. They may have been students that in March of the pandemic, we struggled to engage academically as they went remote, but they were considered dropouts for us. A better number here is the students with disabilities, which at 12.2% of our total population in 2018-19, 6% of those students had withdrawn, and that number has decreased by 2 percentage points, which again, we're moving in the right direction there. High needs, we were at 4.7%, and that has gone up a little, consistent with the overall number of students that has raised from 4.7 to 5.2. And then that economically disadvantaged and low income from 4.8 down to 3.5, and then up to 6.6 last year.
Okay. Before you go on, just the 9.5% in the middle of it, that seems off, skewed wrong or something. Is there a back? Is there?
That's the one that, I was saying, I struggle with one number in a data stream a lot because it doesn't give the context to tell us a story and see if a
That's-
trend exists. And it's some level of an anachronism. If we're seeing steady growth there over the course of the 3 years, I would say, okay, what's going on with our instruction, our assessment, our systems that are in place for our EL students. But when I see it go from 0, spike up like that and come down, it's hard to pinpoint a reason outside of, and I'm not going to use the pandemic as an excuse, but outside of that, I struggle to pinpoint what the reason might be. As we look again at the breakdown by race, we see that under what Desi notes as African American Black, we have 0 going up to 2.2%. What Desi calls Native American has gone from 8.3% up to 25%. It did grow, but again, we are looking at 1% of our total population of students. So 1% would be about 8 students in that. So we're talking about 2 students. And then it goes down to an unmarked number there means that it isn't high enough for Desi to track at that point. That's why we see the dash there. For our Asian population, it's been steady at 0. For what Desi marks as the Hispanic or Latino population, it's gone from 0, and we see an increase here. And here's where I'm seeing a trend, maybe tied to somewhere in our EL population. I'm not sure if there's a connection here. We look at our multi-race non-Hispanic population. We were at 9.3, went down to 2.2, back up to 9.3. For our white population, it has gone from 1.8% to 2.1%. And then females and males, females has grown, very slightly. Males went from 2% up to 3.2% over the 3 years.
Again, just for clarification.
Mhm.
I was gonna say while we're waiting for the slides to change. Each of these percentages you're giving, these are percentages of that demographic
Correct.
group, not of the.
Correct, yes, which is why I made sure underneath, and I think you have the presentation shared with you to note that so you can make that connection of what does this look like in real numbers as well.
Right. And how many total students do you have?
We're right around 800. We're just over 800 students right now, and there's some ed inflow. We took in 2 new students this week, for instance, still coming right after April vacation. So.
Thank you.
So now the question is, what do we do? Because we are seeing a trend overall that I don't like, and I think we all agree, and we're talking about students here. The reason we're here, the people we want to see walk across the stage and move a tassel from one side to the other. And as I consider this, I've been talking a lot to staff and department heads and people at central office about these numbers. And I think we really need to consider it in 2 very distinct ways. The first is supporting the students we have in our building today. We can't make a plan for the future without considering we have 800 students in our building. We need to make a plan for the future, but I don't want to forget those 800 bodies that come in every day. And then how do we plan for that future to make adjustments that are going to support both our staff and our students on their road towards that graduation that we all know is so important? How do we hold on to as many of them as possible looking forward? So as we look at the systemic efforts that we've started to take, and when I say systemic, I'm talking about district-wide. I think there are a lot of really great things happening in our district that align with the need that we're seeing in our students. The first is the professional development taking place in restorative practices and cultural proficiency. And so we look at the people we pulled in, like Dr. Curtis Bates, Dr. Felice Wernham, and Dr. Sayana Mausi, who have been available to all staff with a focus on building relationships with students and encouraging empathy around backgrounds that may be different from our own. I would also add to that the great work of Henry St. Julian and Derek Zara in the cultural proficiency courses they've been offering for graduate credit to our staff to take by choice. And the sheer number of staff that have taken it, I think, is a testament to how important this is to the teachers at Falmouth. We also look at the co-teaching model, which has been in existence for 8-9 years, something like that, which pairs special educators with general educators in a heterogeneous setting that allows special education students to have a greater access and equity in terms of general education curriculum, access to the materials, and greater rigor, but also the support and the scaffolding they might need to succeed in those experiences. When we first engaged in that, we worked with a woman named Dr. Deb Harris, and we trained all of our co-teachers in that model. That was a number of years ago now, and we recognized there's a need to revisit that, because not only do we have new staff, but our staff who was here, maybe they have a different co-teaching partner, and it's important for those partners to work together in that training to get to know each other better and figure out how they're going to work best for students. Or maybe they just want a refresher to remind themselves of the great training. We're very lucky that our new math department head, Dr. Jenna Rosero Coaster, is a Deb Harris certified co-teaching trainer as well. So she's working with Dr. Harris, with Joan Woodward's office as well. And we're figuring out a plan for how do we roll this back to those co-teaching partnerships as quickly as possible. We're even talking potentially about some work in the spring, but especially moving into the fall to make sure we're giving every student the opportunity to succeed in this heterogeneous environment. At Falmouth High School, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question on the co-teaching.
Mhm.
With the co-teaching, with the scheduling that you do you have the opportunity to do planning time for both teachers?
Mhm. So we're very lucky at the high school. Every teacher gets a prep, and then every teacher gets several common planning periods every 6-day cycle. And so with that, when we create the schedule for the coming year, we try and make it so the English department comes to mind because I was an English teacher. Currently, English teachers all have a period 6 free with either common planning or prep, excuse me. And those become a little bit interchangeable in that way. So the English teachers can get together. When we have special educators who are co-teachers in English, I also make sure they have that same period with their co-teaching partners as well, at least once or twice a cycle to get together. They can assess together, they can do their planning for the coming lessons together, or they can just talk about kids and figure out what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Falmouth High School specifically, we also have our coordination team, which consists of Falmouth High School administrators, guidance counselors, support staff. We meet weekly, and during those meetings, the result of each one of those meetings is specific action plans for individual students in need. And these are our at-risk students, more often than not, and they could include a number of interventions. They could lead to an instructional support team meeting, which is where we're going to spend more time going into greater depth about what an individual student might need and figuring out the specific things we want to put in place in their classes that may eventually lead to referral to an adjustment counselor, or maybe some level of academic testing or something along those lines. The coordination team is where we also engage some of our attendance protocols. When we're seeing that a student is habitually absent or chronically absent, which the Department of Education considers to be 10% of the school year or more, is where they mark us as chronically absent. And so we've really beefed up those attendance protocols to make sure as an administrative team, we're calling home more often. We're sending out letters that are coaxing people to come in and speak to us, that talk about the laws and the issues around that. We've been able, in terms of attendance, also to work very closely with the DA's office, who has a wonderful program called Keep Them Coming, that allows us to get together with some resources from outside of the school, especially the Family Resource Center in Barnstable, with the family to sit down around the table and say, what's going on, and we're here to help, before we end up in a place like the juvenile court because of truancy, which is an unfortunate step we have to take sometimes when that truancy grows and grows and grows. And that's always something we want to avoid. So we always work from that supportive angle first, because we know the first step towards student success academically is having them in class. And so along with that, we have conferences constantly. Our guidance department and our school adjustment counselors are so wonderful, and they're really great at reaching out to families, at setting up these meetings, bringing families in, working with administration. And they really focus on the flexibility that we can offer students in our academic program that maybe a student doesn't know exists, because they think high school is cookie cutter, it's one size fits all. And by having those conversations, we can start to talk about the different things we can do and the different flexibilities we do have. We can talk about, again, the supports that can be offered both within and outside of school that we're aware of, and just any option besides fully dropping out of school. Along with that, in terms of FHS, we all know how lucky we are to have the Falmouth Education Foundation in town, and they were very generous in awarding us a grant that was supposed to be engaged in September of 2020, and we had to put a pause on until this year because it involved a behaviorist named Jessica Minahan coming to Falmouth High School and working on a behavior protocol that she's created to talk about if it's a fit for us. Jessica is a world-renowned behaviorist, and her mantra is behavior is communication. And when we're talking about behaviors, we're not talking about just the things we might consider more explosive or what we might consider behaviors that we saw or call behavioral issues. She really points out a student sitting quietly and just not working is communication. And what are they trying to tell us, and what can we put in place for a student that doesn't initiate work? And so she's come 4 times, both to the high school, and she worked with us on an initial training here at the administration building. And we've applied for an additional grant next year to bring her back to continue this work, because again, our coordination team, our support staff, and the teachers that have met with her have been very, very positive in their feedback and want more because they want to know how to do this work well. I should have put the button earlier. It's on a roll.
You know what the cost is for that program?
For Dr. Minahan to come. So I'd have to look at the exact grant, but I know that my entire grant for the year was, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, it was plus or minus $12,000 for her to be here those 4 times throughout the year.
Thank you.
Yep. So looking at the high school, we're also talking about programmatic changes that have taken place over the last few years, and especially this year, as we've noticed this graduation trend and this dropout trend going in the opposite direction from where we wanted to. The first is the Pathways program, which has existed in its infancy for a year or so and has grown with the addition of an AmeriCorps fellow at Falmouth High School this year. And that's a partnership between the VIP's office, Falmouth Public Schools, and the community that supports and empowers middle and high school youth in Falmouth who are feeling disconnected and disengaged at school through mentorship, field trips, community building, career and college exploration, and academic support. Focusing on freshmen and sophomores at FHS, Pathways works to connect students to their learning and learning environment early in their high school career. I would argue that the students who are dropping out of Falmouth High School, the first problem did not exist the day they walked in their freshman year. However, the earlier we as a Falmouth High School staff can catch them after they walk in their freshman year, the better. And I think that's what the Pathways program does very well. Our fellow Rachel Dragos has worked really hard. She worked for months on just building relationships with the students with whom she's working. And then some fun stuff, some activities. And then once she felt that, it was now we're going to get down to work. And we're going to do the work, and then we can also have the fun along with that. So she's building in some of these field trips still, but she's also meeting weekly with students during clipper time, checking in, how are their grades, what work do they need to do, working on communicating with their teachers, and really we're trying to catch these students early. Married really nicely to that is the new GAP program. And this is a grant-funded program from DESE. And it's an initiative for students who've been identified as in danger of not graduating. We were just able to start this up this year due to the DESE grant. And we're focusing on juniors and seniors. It gives students an academic advocate who maintains contact between the students, the teachers, and the families. And the advocate, whom many of you know, Dr. Nancy Taylor, assists students in prioritizing their work and identifying where they need to demonstrate learning to earn credits and pass their courses. I think this is married really nicely to Pathways because Pathways is trying to engage our students at the beginning of their high school career. And as I was saying earlier, we have to work not only with looking towards the future, which I think Pathways is trying to build in, re-engage students, but we need to look at the students we have right now. And that's what this GAP work is doing. Our 11th and 12th graders is where this work is focused, and really trying to get as many students on that cusp, on the edge, across that graduation stage. So in addition, we have the After School Academy, which is a brand new program. And it's actually, I should say it's a revitalized program, which is supported by George Spivey, whom again, many of you know. And this is supporting students in grades 9 through 12 who want or need extra help with their classroom assignments, who desire to explore their educational goals in higher learning in college or university, technical or vocational school, and independent study or an internship. The Academy helps students set academic and career goals to develop a step-by-step plan to achieve those goals through thoughtful course selection, better study habits, classroom teacher guidance and encouragement, and parent support. And so what Mr. Spivey is doing is every Wednesday and Thursday, he's coming after school He has come into school during the day. We have met with a number of students who have been identified, again, through that wonderful coordination team as being at risk, grades 9 through 12, and who we believe with a little connection and some support after school could make gains pretty immediately. George is working with them on their academics for the first hour after school, with the idea that in that second hour before the late buses come, we're going to try and get some level of speaker series in to engage these students in goal setting and talking about what their options are after high school and things along that line. So again, really working that engagement and that academic piece in conjunction with each other to try and maintain a connection in school. Finally, we have the high set. This is for the out of school youth and adults, and it's the best opportunity for those people to demonstrate their skills and knowledge and earn a state-issued high school equivalency credential. Years ago, we had a wonderful partnership with Cape Cod Community College where we were able to offer the paper-based high set at school. And I don't want to be a high set or a GED factory at Falmouth High School, but for some of our students, they say, my goal is to get the high set, and then my goal is to go to work or to go to Cape Cod Community College, which is an option for them to take classes and find a path that way. And for that small population of students at Falmouth High School, we've wanted to make sure we do have an option for them, because unfortunately that partnership with Cape Cod Community College had to come to an end through no fault of the college and no fault of Falmouth High School. It was because of a change in the way the high set worked when they switched over to computer-based testing. So we had to contact that company directly, ETS, and we are now identified as a high set testing center. We are again in the infancy of the progress towards our first testing sessions. But I want to make sure we have an option for our Falmouth High School students, that small population again, for whom the high set is a goal, and transportation to Hyannis, which currently is the only place where they could take that test, is a real concern or an issue. And that's an equity and opportunity issue that we've seen over the last few years, that that gap has grown, especially since we lost the high set at Falmouth High School. And to tell a student, hold on, in the eyes of the state, you don't have to be considered a dropout. If you take this test, you are no longer considered a dropout, and you have the opportunity to move on to a community college if that's what you desire. I think that's a really positive thing for those students.
Question,
Yes.
has that replaced the GED?
It's the same idea. There still is a GED test, but the high set seems to be the more popular version of the GED at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Why would we have two, a high set and a GED?
We don't currently. We are only offering the high set. The high set is an equivalency test. That is the one we're offering, if that makes sense.
So why, okay, maybe not we, let me clarify a little, why would the state have both the GED and the high set if the high set is the preferred?
There are just two options to go down the same road. I believe it's kind of like the synonym would be that students could take the SAT or the ACT.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that's the current planning. That's what we've done over the last couple of years as we've started to notice concerns with dropouts, and what we've really put in place this year as well as this concern has come to light. And then it's about, again, looking towards the future and what are the next, maybe bigger steps that we want to take to make sure we're engaging as many students as possible in Falmouth High School. Very, very lucky as an interim principal to follow in the footsteps of Mary Gans, as we all know. And one of the wonderful things she put in place pretty immediately in her leadership at Falmouth High was a faculty council. During COVID, as we were all doing so much to just figure out how buildings and schedules and grading and everything else worked, that was not able to meet on a regular basis, that faculty council. And so as I was looking at these numbers, I really wanted staff input. I'm not a person who likes to make big unilateral decisions on my own, and I don't think those are good for schools. I think we need the people who are in classrooms every day to tell us what's important and where we need to go. And so re-engaging that faculty council has been a really important step and been eye-opening for me, and we've had wonderful conversations in the 3 or 4 meetings we've had. And then in conjunction with Dr. Taylor here, our work in the curriculum council and with our Falmouth High School department heads we focused our recent discussions to these concerns. And so through this work, we've been analyzing grades and grading across the entire school. We've been looking at our grading policies. We've been taking a sample of what's happening in terms of grading and assessment, not only in Falmouth High School, not only on Cape Cod, but really across the nation. And doing some real deep research. We're, again, very much at the beginning of that, and not to say I'm shocked because I know what a hardworking staff we have, but it's amazing to see them dive in and want to have these really hard conversations, because when you're married to a way of doing things that you've done so long, it's scary to change. But they've been very open to saying we could do this, and what if we did, and what would it look like, and what would colleges think? And it's been really wonderful conversations at the very beginning. And then along with that, we've also been investigating a number of grant opportunities. For example, there is a 2-year grant from the Department of Education with the potential for teachers to pilot some of these new grading systems that includes a massive amount of professional development behind it. So those are just a couple of the steps we're taking looking towards the future. I could probably go on and on about this subject because it's something about which I'm very passionate. I saw 10 minutes on the agenda. And I've gone way over that already. So
That's okay.
I believe that's my last slide. And there we are with our clipper ship. So any questions I can give you
Tom,
now?
I actually have a question for you. Could you tell me approximately how many students are participating in, Pathways, GAP, and also the After School Academy, just roughly?
Yeah, so, and these are going to be very rough
Yes.
numbers. I should have gotten these together for you earlier now. With the GAP program, I believe it's somewhere 15 to 20 students, juniors and seniors. With the Pathways program, I believe at Falmouth High School, and this might be the Lawrence to Falmouth High School strand in total, but it's somewhere around 24. And with the After School Academy, we identified to begin 12 students, and we're bringing more in every time Mr. Spivey comes back in the building, because we know what a magnet he is for students.
That's great. And then just a second question, do you ever do sort of exit interview with any students who are dropping out?
We're actually required to do our best to have an exit interview with every student that drops out of the high school. Our guidance counselors work through that protocol. Along with that, the saddest part for me about the students who drop out is the high number of them who are the ones we just lose without them walking into the building to say, it is time for me to go. We lose the opportunity to have that conversation at that point in time. And we do our best to contact, to call, to email, we hear they're working at Dunkin' Donuts, and we drive down there and say in the drive-in, why don't you come back and have a conversation? We can probably make something work for you. And it's the ones that we lose in that way, the hardest to swallow, because we don't have a chance to try.
Thank you. Any questions? Terry?
It's not a question, it's a comment. Getting the kids back, are students involved in any of these programs as leaders or liaisons? Because sometimes kids talking to kids can do 10 times what an adult can.
We have a really robust, through our honor society peer tutoring program that we have worked to engage with the After School Academy, so that honor society students who need their community service hours can make themselves available in the library when those After School Academy students are there, and hopefully work that peer tutoring angle. Again, the After School Academy being the newest of the 3 programs, we're still working through the bumps in the road on some of those logistics, but we're doing the best we can to put everything in place.
Yeah. Like if I drove to Dunkin' Donuts and get back there laughing, but
Right.
if one of their friends did,
Oh,
that would.
we do a lot of send this person a text message,
Yeah.
please, and tell them I missed them, and we don't have to talk to them. Yeah,
Not to be telling you what to do.
no, I appreciate it.
What you've done here is, I'm glad you went over 10 minutes because it's so interesting.
But I appreciate that, Terry, but I'm also not so naive to think that we don't still have work to do. The numbers are telling us a story here, and we have to recognize that. I'm not going to ignore it and just say, oh, we've done all this and see, we're fine. this is some heavy lifting and we got to address it.
Questions? Bill?
Yeah, first of all, I read through this, earlier before our meeting too, and I want to commend you for your dedication to this, because I think it would be very easy to come in and say, after all the pandemic and everything else, the only increase we've seen is 0.7%.
Mhm.
I could see it being worded that way, and that's not what you're saying. You're saying we've increased by 7%. That's totally unacceptable. And I commend you, because you could easily just say, we have a 97.3% rate, stay in school. But I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much. Let's
absolutely.
also remember, I've only been on the job since January. So,
Right.
The work of my predecessor of Mary is really at the heart of this as well. And I don't want to.
Right, and I totally appreciate that too. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something towards the end. I had a few other questions, but you've answered them. The 2-year grant, at the very end, it said investigating grant opportunities, the DESE 2-year grant. So there were some grants we're looking at. If you didn't get those grants, how much do you have a ballpark of what those grants are? How much you would need if those grants were not?
I think the thing about those grants is they give us a greater opportunity to experiment where we want to and to pilot. And some of those opportunities will still be there, and just working with the faculty council has been so heartening to me to see their willingness to roll up their sleeves and say, yeah, let's talk about this. It's funny, we had a meeting on Monday, and it was the third time, I craft an agenda and I always kind of leave some of the old business on there. And I said, okay, I came in, I said, we really want to get to some of these other pieces that you all put on the agenda. It's time to talk about the things that you want to address in the school. I know I've addressed some of these things, and I want to keep just bringing it up so we have the conversation quickly. And my hope is that that leads to a colleague having a conversation with another colleague or with the department head, and that these things are happening organically. And so I said, so let's just look at this real quick. I can give you an update. I want you to know I'm going to meet the school committee tomorrow, talking about some of what we've been talking about. Exciting watching. Please, you don't listen to me enough. And then we talked about this for the next hour. And it was 3:15 when I promised, because this is a volunteer group, and I promised I'm never going to keep them more than an hour. I said, everyone, it's time to go. I'm sorry, we didn't get to any of your stuff again. So it's okay. So we've got such a dedicated staff who are really willing to do this. And the ones in the faculty council are a small part of that, but I believe we have a diverse group there from a wide range of departments who are willing to just start talking. And that's the most exciting thing for me, is that people want to talk about the change. I don't know if that directly answers your question, but I think I don't have a ballpark number, but what it tells me is that the work will happen anyway, one way or the other.
Right. Awesome, thank you.
Andrea?
I have to echo what others have been saying. Great presentation. Just everything was very clear, and I was able to follow along and really be able to dig into some of this. So I have a couple questions just to get a better understanding. So when you're identifying, when we're looking at these numbers as actual dropouts,
Mhm.
so how do you categorize that? Is there any possibility that there are students in the number that have withdrawn for any other reason?
Yes, there are. And there's also the potential for some of these, there is the potential in the data acting strange in strange ways for example, a student dropping out, deciding they want to come back to Falmouth High School, and then dropping out again. And my understanding is that counts against us twice. And so things like that do come into play for a student that says, I want to try, and we're always going to say, please come back. Yeah, we want them back. And they realize, well, I'm still as behind as where I was, or the same external factors are still what they were the last time I was here. So yes, in some regards that can be the case. And the one thing I'll say about our data, and speaking on behalf of Julie Payne, who is our data guru, is amazing. She is very honest about the data. There's not a lie in the numbers at all. She doesn't sugarcoat or pad anything. She wants to make sure it is accurate. And that's that's what it should be. These are accurate numbers.
And so that's great to know because obviously you're looking at the trends and trying to stop something before it becomes a big problem. But I think, and trying to do everything possible for every student is coming through very clearly. But it might also be something that we could never get to zero because of these other factors, right? So what else? So the exit interview question was one that I had as well. And I guess through the ones that you are able to do, have we identified any types of things? Are there particular things that are the greatest risks, or is it really so individualized for every student?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably pull some things out of my hat, but they, I don't know if it would be objective enough to say this is the one thing. So I don't know if it would be fair for me to answer because I'm going to steer the conversation direction that I don't know is accurate.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And then I guess my last question is, it's really great to see all the programs that are in place to meet those students. And obviously we need to populate that with a lot of students because you never know which ones are those that were heading toward dropping out. Many of them in those programs are just going to be getting additional supports, which is amazing. How would your team go about identifying which of those programs is the best fit for which student?
So I think the descriptions say a lot. For instance, the Pathways program is really going to be focused on those early high school students, and the GAP is going to be focused on the later for right now. And if we're able to maintain these programs, then maybe that becomes a little more fluid or distinct in a different way. And then, in my mind, the after school one is in education. We always talk about tiers of support. Tier 1 is for everybody. Tier 2 is that first intervention. Tier 3 is the bigger intervention. So maybe the after school academy, because it's extra time, students have to be a little more willing to stay. We are feeding them and having speakers, so that's a nice draw. But as a part of that, that might be more of the tier 2, where the advocate in the school during the school day is more of that tier 3 support.
And so that sounds a little bit like potential for Pathways could put the GAP program out of business if they did their job really well, because that's the early intervention. And maybe that stops the need for things.
For the
like
later
that.
ones, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Kelly. I have the same question about student input, because, hearing from them directly is amazing. And I think even though it's really, challenging to collect that information, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the answers to those questions change post-COVID, that they would have been, the things that we can imagine. But after COVID, they might not be. They might be completely different. So I'm glad that we're still doing that. And then my other question is, we have these programs, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but are there do you know of other model programs that are trying to do the same thing? Like, the reason I thought of it is because we adapted the BRIGHT program to be the Bridge program to try and solve a problem that we saw happening, and we didn't have to create it because it already existed. All we had to do was say, like, oh, that will work here. Thank you very much. So do you know of things like that, to have space in the building where we can get kids in and just sort of get them back into the whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before moving into the principal's role, I was part of a Cape Cod assistant principals group with an email group, and we would meet monthly. And I'm still in touch with all those people emailing. So as I was starting to notice, dig into these numbers, those are the people I went to immediately because I have a relationship with them and asked, what are you all seeing? And sadly, they're seeing a lot of the same stuff. That doesn't work as an excuse for me, but it says, okay, we're all on the same page. And then it's, well, what are you trying? What are you putting in place? And they're doing a lot of the same things that we're doing, which again is heartening. The other piece there, Kelly, is through the grant that funds GAP right now. I always want to call it the GAP program, but that's like saying ATM machine, right? P is the program. Through the DESI funds for GAP, we have a regular meeting with some DESI officials that are really wonderful, pretty inspiring people who bring in model schools who have done this grant work and say, this is the program they have in place, this is what they do. So we're learning as we go through that and having those conversations as well.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank
You know,
you.
the hard work. Thank you. Switching gears, next up is presentation of the superintendent summative evaluation, and I will share my screen here. See if I have similar technological issues here. Share. So you have a copy of this presentation in your packet here. Okay, so as we all know, one of the main responsibilities of the school committee is to complete an annual summative evaluation of the superintendent. So this is just an overview of the 5 steps of the summative evaluation. As we know, it begins with the self-assessment that the superintendent does each year, analyzes and goal setting and sets a plan for the year. Next is the implementation of the plan, followed by the mid-cycle goal review, and here we are at the summative evaluation. So here again, you have a copy of this. It's too small on the screen. Here is an overview of our next steps. We're here with the review. This Friday, 3 more observations are due to Leah, and those are to be emailed to Leah after you've shared them with the superintendent. On May 13th, we will complete the summative. Each person needs to complete a summative evaluation and email that to me. On May 17th, the evaluation subcommittee will meet together to compile all individual evaluations into one summative document that will be shared. And Lori is not at that meeting. And then on the 20th of May, Lori and I will sit down together to go over the summative evaluation. On June 14th, we will present the summative evaluation, which will provide a summary of the ratings and the scoring. And then on June 28th, we will vote the superintendent's summative evaluation. So what is summative evaluation? So each school committee member prepares an end of cycle summative evaluation to assess the superintendent in 4 key areas: progress on her goals, performance on each of the standards, overall rating of performance, and impact on student learning. And to get there, each school committee member reviews evidence prepared and presented during school committee meetings, including presentations from other staff members, the goal update report that Lori provides to us. So far, we've had 2 updates on her goals, and any additional information that you need to really create a robust, anything that you need to create the robust evaluation. And also the committee members' observations, which is why it is so important that we have as many as possible, because those are things that we as school committee members can review, and any other related evidence that you need. So the performance standards, there are 4 standards: unsatisfactory, that's pretty self-explanatory; needs improvement, also fairly self-explanatory; proficient. And this is one that we need to recognize as a practice is seen as fully understood and satisfactory. So this is rigorous. This is a rigorous expected level of performance. And then exemplary. So key information here is a rating of exemplary indicates that practice significantly exceeds proficient and could serve as a model of practice regionally or statewide. On the next slide, I'll share with you a copy of the actual summative report, but here are a few tips to remember. To do the first and second page last, they are summaries of other pages. And proficient is a perfectly good score. Exemplary is reserved for when the person's performance is such that it could be used as a model for other superintendents. And remember, if you do not give a score of proficient, so if you give a score of exemplary and or unsatisfactory or needs improvement, you must write a comment associated with that score. If you open the document in Word, you'll be able to check the boxes. If you use it on PDF, you will have to print it and check it. Ideally, you'll use the Word document. It makes it easier for the subcommittee evaluation subcommittee to complete this. And to remember that the documents are public information. After evaluations have been completed, the summative evaluation is presented to the superintendent, and the summative is presented in public session and voted on by the school committee on June 28th. And I'm actually going to temporarily stop sharing and open a new screen because it looks like my slides related to the report are not included in this presentation, but you do have a copy here. Let me pull those up. You can talk amongst yourselves while I do this. Okay, this will be shared in a slightly different format, but you'll still be able to see what I am seeing. So this is a copy of the evaluation report. I will email this to you this evening along with a rubric and other documents from DESE related to the superintendent evaluation. So when I remarked about doing pages 1 and 2 last, this is what I was referring to, because as you can see, page 1 is a summary of all of the information that you're going to fill out on pages 3 through 8. So page 1 assesses overall progress toward goals and also assesses performance on the standards. And I will scroll to page 3, which highlights the superintendent's specific goals for this school year. So related to student learning, it was to implement district and school plans for re-engaging all students in full-time in-person learning in a safe and healthy environment. Again, you want evidence to support that and then rate that specific goal on either did not meet, some progress, significant progress, met or exceeded. District 1 goal related to outreach and communication, and specifically after limited interaction during COVID-19 to reestablish in-person opportunities for engagement with staff, students, and families, and also to continue community engagement. And again, you rate on the headers above. And then the third goal this year related to professional practice, a focus on equity, inclusion, and diversity, to work with principals and other district leaders to carry out the established vision and common language and delve deeper into professional learning for all staff that challenges our beliefs, understandings, and practices in the pursuit of equitable academic and social emotional outcomes for all students. So again, these are the performance goals that you will be evaluating. And then beyond that, the standards that were identified above on pages 1 and 2. The first standard relates to instructional leadership, and then there are subcategories here. And again, you rate based on the unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary. Standard 2 relates to management and operations. And standard 3 is family and community engagement. Standard 4 is professional culture. And again, this is just the points and tips to remember. So I went through that fairly quickly, just for the sake of time, and we've been here before, but are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I can't remember something.
Yeah.
So, just by being on the committee every year, except for this year,
Which page are you on?
it doesn't matter, all of them.
Okay, sure.
Under each of the standards,
Mhm.
there's all those boxes that say focus
Yes,
indicator.
thank you. Yep.
Are we supposed to check some of those? I can't remember how to do that part.
Yes, so thank you. That's a great question. So if we look at page 3 of the evaluation report, where it says, for example, student learning goals.
Okay.
See how there are those
Ah,
focus
thank you.
indicators?
Okay.
Yes, you would check those, but that's a really good question.
Yeah, I could have done that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Yes, seeing none. So just to quickly recap, if we could have the observations to Leah by Friday, and then the summative evaluation is due on May 18th. What, 13th? Yes, 13th and then 18th. Thank you. May 13th for the summative.
I'm taking
evaluation.
that extra time, just so you know.
I appreciate that. And as always, call or email with any questions. Okay, moving on. Act on Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging job description. So as we know, we have had two wonderful, thoughtful conversations related to this job description, and we are here with an update from the superintendent.
Thank you. So I've tried to incorporate all your suggestions. And I was saying earlier that I really appreciate everyone's input, because I think we are at a better place because of those rich discussions during the school committee meeting and the suggestions that you have sent in, along with the suggestions from our educators and our students. So one of the things that I heard often, and I felt like it was time to change, was the title. And what I heard was that people know what DEI is, and so the Equity, Opportunity, and Belonging title that we had given was, people were getting tripped up on it, and we don't want to minimize what the work of this person is going to be, and people know what DEI is. I was having a hard time letting go of the belonging because it is something that when we talk about DEI work, it's so important, because I think that is what we want every student to feel, as though they belong, as well as every staff member, that they belong here. And so, so now we have the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We had a session with Dr. Khalees Warnham last week, I believe, maybe I guess 2 weeks ago. We had a spring break in there somewhere. But she kept referring to it as the DEI and belonging position, and it just kind of felt right. We can certainly change that, but I just wanted to give some background as to why that you're seeing a new title. So along with the new title, then I took out the 3 definitions of equity, opportunity, and belonging, because it didn't quite fit with that. So I took that out. Plus, I think that people know what DEI, the definition of that is. So and then I followed suit with that new title all the way through the document. So I made sure that I was following to make sure it was always identified. And then there was really no substantive changes. We moved some things around and reorganized under the responsibilities, but it's basically there. Sometimes we combined it based on suggestions, or reworded some of it, but substantively everything was still there. And so that's basically the new draft.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Everybody, yeah.
So Terry, is
I'll
second.
make a motion to approve the new job description for the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging.
Second. Terry seconds. Questions, comments, discussion? Bill.
Yes, just several, but one of the things that really concerns me is the equity audit. Do we have a timeline for that? Do we have a cost for that? Do we have the articulation agreement with hiring somebody, as well as that equity audit happening at the same time? So I think that makes the transition, 1, easier, 2, more productive, and obviously to delve into areas that need concentration.
So based on the presentation of the last session, I've continued to get feedback that the audit should be concurrent with the new position. And so I'd like to see those start at the same time. I'd like to see, we can continue to look at different companies. I think that the cost that we came up with could be anywhere from, 30 to 60,000 or 75 to 100,000. And some of that is kind of on the district to create personalized audit for this district. So I think that's where some of the difference in the cost would be. But I do believe that it's very important for the new person to be present and be a part of a team as we're going through, as the group is going through the audit, to understand and really take ownership of that audit, so that they can create the goals for this district and what we need to do.
So there are professional entities out there that do this equity audit, and it's not just controlled by DESI?
It's not with Desi at
Not
all.
at all, not
Not
at
at
all,
all.
it's totally separate.
They're independent.
Andrea.
I had a question about the equity audit as well, and that is just that does, do understand that we're being advised to do that with the assistance of the person in this position. But do we need that person to be already hired before starting the process of selecting a company to do it, to kind of get some of that work rolling?
I don't know if that's necessary. I think being the spring and we're moving toward the end of the school year, we gotta look at our capacity and who could actually lead that work in interviewing. I did a very preliminary with you when I had conversations. So there would be the need to interview, to customize, and put that audit together. And depending on the cost, I'd have to consult with our business director on whether it has to be an RFP, if it has, it could be a state vendor. So I'm just saying there's many pieces to it. I am concerned with the capacity of anyone to be able to pull that off. So I think that's just gotta be weighed and just, honestly.
Because
that needs to be weighed.
I just know that when you reported on it, there
Yeah.
is such a long
Yes.
time period for it to actually happen. And so just kind of wondering.
But no one was able to start before the summer, and most of them were booked until the fall, that even had availability. There, one company said, we could give you a list of data points that you need to pull, so you could start pulling those data points over the summer, that no one had the capacity that we talked with to begin right away anyway.
Any other questions or comments? Bill, report.
I've read the letters and emails and comments and spoken to people about this. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that talking about this position, whether or not this position needs to be tweaked, approved, not approved, however we want to word it, is not saying that we don't prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in our school district. There's been discussion about this in our meetings in the past. There's been discussions about postponing this until we have an equity audit. That any of that talk, any of those questions, any discussion about postponing anything isn't because we don't prioritize diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's not a question of that. I think all of us would agree that that is important, that all of us, that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is important. The question at hand is, do we feel this is the best way to go about it at this particular time? And so before we go further with tonight, I know there's a motion on the table, I just wanted to say that it's not a question of whether or not we prioritize diversity, equity, inclusion. It's a question about whether or not this is the best way to go about it in Falmouth at this time, or if there are other opportunities that we could look at. We heard a wonderful presentation earlier about a collaborative effort in a school to address a problem as a community, where leadership has stepped in, other folks have stepped in and led and to solve the problem. Drop now. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification before we carry it.
Thank you, Bill. Terry.
I think something that we have that will help, it's a new job. It's really hard. You gotta start somewhere. I mean, and maybe we'll make some mistakes and maybe we won't be perfect, but we can tweak along the way. I think we have, the equity audit thing for me is a game changer as making it doable. And I know I echo what Bill said, there've been comments about us dragging feet and everything, but it wasn't that we didn't think it was, we just want to make sure we have support for this person. So I think obviously the equity companies or whatever they are will be able to give direction too. So, because many districts in the country are doing this. So I think it's a good place to start. It may not be the perfect place to start, but I see it as a very good place to start.
Kelly, I just want, it's sort of tangentially related to what Terry was saying, you know, I want to point out, we really only did take an extra week. It's not like we were dragging our feet, not getting any work done. And I'm glad that we did, because this job description, I really think is substantially better than where we started. And has input from students, and it has input from the committee, and it has input from stakeholders. And I'm glad we took an extra 2 weeks, because I think it was worth it. I think the end product is better for it. And then I do agree that the equity audit and the additional information we gathered about that, I think has made us all feel as though whoever comes into the position is going to have the pieces that they need. Because more than anything, we just want them to be successful in the position. And I think we've done a better job of setting up for that. I agree. Thank you. Melissa.
Months ago, I had said I really wanted to be mindful and purposeful about this position, and I didn't want to jump at something because we felt like it had to be done right this minute. I wanted really to make sure that we took our time and really thought things through. And I think that this new job description really has everything that we talked about. I truly feel like this is mindful and purposeful. And I think that, you know, we probably are going to make some hiccups along the way, but I think that that's how you learn, and it's okay. And with the help of the audit and other countries other companies throughout the country that are, you know, we're not the first one to do this. And it's okay to look at other districts and see what's working there, what's not working, how we can make it more Falmouth. I think this is a great place, and I feel really good about this.
Thank you, Melissa. Bill.
Yes, again, the responsibilities, to me, the job description is totally overwhelming. And that's why the concurrency of an equity audit is so important. If you combine those two together, the person and the equity audit, I think you can zero in on a lot of these things and make modifications and improve this whole sequence. And I think that's critical. And when you mention the concurrency, that's positive.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I echo everything you said. I'm very excited that we're here. I think everyone worked really hard. Thank you for all your research and all your hard work. And there is a motion on the table, and it's a second, and we're all together. So I know, right? So all in favor of approving the job description for the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, and the ayes have it. So here we go. Thank you very much. Great. Let's get it posted. Exactly.
You're on for tomorrow.
Could you give us a rough timeline? You're not held to it, but tell us the timeline for this.
So Jelani and I have worked out a timeline, if it were approved, and it is, tonight. She will have it posted tomorrow. She is.
Oh, no pressure, Jelani.
Bye. But it's great. The job description is done. She's gonna post it. We've already have begun working on the interview team. And so we've got that worked out. We're gonna have it posted. We're looking at mid-May to do our first round of interviews. So hopefully we'll have some candidates by that time. If not, obviously we'll postpone it, but I'm very confident that we're gonna have candidates. So we're looking at mid-May interview process, and then we'll see. Officially starting July 1 in the new year. I'm not sure if you could get anybody immediately at that time, but we still have Mr. George Spivey and Dr. Sayana, who is the providing services for us.
Awesome, thank you, and thank you, Johnny, in advance for all your
Yes,
hard
thank
work. Your work, sister. Great, thank you. Next, first read of the revision of communicable disease. Wait, sorry, I skipped one. I skipped it. Act on rescinding general interim policy on COVID-19 related issues, policy EBC.
So the policy subcommittee has met and reviewed the COVID policy, which was what they were charged with to do. And then the second policy became a question because of that review. But I'm gonna turn it over to anyone on the subcommittee if you guys want to, but Sonia's prepared to go over it if you want her to do
Go
it.
for it, Sonia.
If you're prepared.
She is prepared. Sonia's always prepared.
So we spent some time moving through the policy that's here, EBC supplemental, and feel that we are at a point now, as we've restored visitors, students, have the choice to wear a mask if it's not required, staff as well, that we've gotten to a point where we could actually rescind this policy that was set up in the interim. And one of the concerns that came up is that if DESE or another governing board were to change any level of advisory, prescribing actions for us, what would we do then? And so that brought us over to, as Lori said, the next policy that's there for a first read, which is JLCC, communicable diseases. And so we've adjusted that phrase to broaden the number of advising agencies from whom we would take guidance, should we need to do that in the future.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve rescinding general interim policy on COVID-19 related issues, policy EBC? Is there a motion? I worked hard, so yes, Melissa, and a second by Terry. Any other questions or comments?
I just have a quick question. So are we in the interim, between the time that we rescind this and the next meeting when we probably will approve the other one? Are we okay?
We're good.
Okay, that's all I need. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of rescinding the policy, say aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. And then the first read of the revision of communicable disease policy JLCC. Is this all for you?
Yes, so this is in the red text included in the draft. Those are the extensions to include the Department of Education and any other agency of state, federal government, and or if we receive advice from Dr. Parkinson as our consulting physician guiding our action.
Okay. And something to note in the long list of things that was in the original policy, some of those topics are touched upon elsewhere in the policy manual. So, I mean, we didn't go, no COVID out. We didn't do that. We did cross-reference some.
Great, thank you, Chair. And Kelly.
I just think that the D in district consulting physician should probably be kept.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will have an action on that policy during our next meeting. Next, update by the superintendent.
All right, thank you. Went to a wonderful activity today. The Office of Teaching and Learning has put together Earth Day. It's at Goodwill Park. And we started that a couple years ago. Our very first Earth Day celebration and field trip was to the Seacrest. And then we had 2 years of COVID. So we brought it back and it came back stronger than ever. And so I really appreciate Dr. Talliers and all of the support that she received. But I will give a shout out to Sarah Vendetti because she did a lot of work at organizing and bringing people in. And so it was really great. We had the Sea Education Association there and did a, might have been my favorite activity, but really we're showing the, plastics that's in the water. And so the students had, it mimicked, what an animal that may be taking up, and could you pick through and not get the plastic? And it was nearly impossible to be able to pick up the rice pieces that they used, and there was little bits of plastic in it, and it was nearly impossible to be able to pick that up without getting the plastics. So I thought that was it was just such a visual, and very important. And then the Marine Environmental Services was back. They did an activity around the oyster filtration. There'll be a follow-up classroom activity where they can actually see the oysters in the tank, where the water is murky, and see over some days that water becomes very clear with the oysters. So that'll be a classroom activity that we'll follow up with. And then our Falmouth Public School leaders, they were doing a recycle relay, a well entanglement activity, a bee house, which was very, pretty cool too. It was a new one this year, where they actually were building bee houses. So the students are into that. They did Earth Day bingo, paper bag activity, and where the students had the stop and shop bags, and they decorated them all about Earth Day. So people will be able to use those bags. And then they were graphing the litter they found in the park. So that was some of the activities. We also had food sustainability presentation and a renewable energy activity. One of the really nice opportunities that we had, the Falmouth High School Science Honor Society students participate, and so they helped deliver the activities and work with the students, and it's always nice to see the older students and the younger students. So they were just rock stars themselves, but I actually saw them having a lot of fun too, just like the third graders. So it was all third graders across all 4 elementary schools. Everyone was there. One teacher stopped me as I was walking around, and she said, "This is the best field trip I have ever been on." And it's just, and the kids were just, sharing about which stations that they thought was better, and could give reasons for it, but it was just all in all really good day, a good activity. So glad we were able to get back to that. So thank you. So Dr. Sayana Mawusi, our DEI consultant, has set up 3 forums around microaggressions, creating a welcoming environment. It's the first session was, oh my goodness, just Monday, I believe. And yeah, it was Monday. And then there's 2 more sessions, and they're each independent. So the staff, it's all volunteer. If they want to, it's after school, and they can attend if they want to. And so we're very excited, and she got some good response on Monday. I want to share the kindness suicide awareness event, but Dr. Woodward, would you like to? We attended, and it was wonderful, but I'm going to let you give some details about that.
Certainly. So on April 12th, the Falmouth Public Schools Guidance Department partnered with the organization called Sharing Kindness. And it was to offer a special evening program for grades 5 through 12 students and their parents and guardians to shine a light on mental health and suicide awareness. The event was open to all Falmouth community members. The event ran from, well, it was scheduled from 5:45 to 8:15, but it was a riveting conversation with the people that were there. I think we ended at about 9 o'clock, but it was at the Falmouth High School. So it started with wellness tables out in the lobby, wellness tables with resources from Sharing Kindness, Falmouth High School and Lawrence Guidance, and the Guidance and School Adjustment Counselors, BACO, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Falmouth Human Services, Families for Depression Awareness, Wellstrong, and the Cape Cod Community Support Coalition. So they all had booths, information booths, and were open for discussion. Then we moved into the auditorium, and we heard some student speakers that talked on the topic of their mental health and some of their stories that they shared. That moved into, there was a showing of the movie, and it was called My Ascension, and it's a film about spreading hope in fighting suicide. It's really kind of filmed on one particular student's journey with their own struggles, and where that led to their outreach and passion of spreading awareness and hope and commitment through schools and communities. Upon the conclusion of the viewing of the film, there's an expert panel discussion. So there were representatives from our school and our community, providers in mental health and medical physicians and mental health providers. And that was a nice question and answer. And from that opportunity, that's where the conversation just, it may not have been, the auditorium was not full, but those that were there were really engaged in very in-depth and enriching conversations. So throughout all of that, we had both mental health and school adjustment counselors that were available for anyone before, during, and after the event. So it was a very nice opportunity. And we talked about a lot of the resources that we're offering here in our schools, but also the connections we have with our mental health providers in the community and some potential action steps we want to take to ensure that we're increasing our mental health awareness and suicide prevention resources for our own families here in Falmouth.
Thank you. Also, right before spring break, on Thursday night, we had the Stellar Stories. I know I shared it several times. It was coming up. It absolutely was wonderful. Dr. Tanya, you'd like to say a few words about?
Sure. A shout out to all of our storytellers. We had 4 students step up on the stage and really rehearse and develop their stories. Cheryl Hamilton from Stellar Story Company came out and joined us. And if the students weren't, compelling enough in their individual stories, as we took them and the staff stories and kind of developed the theme, our professional storyteller who came and joined us tied them all together and told the story of how her family, how her name came to be and how it had changed from how it was given to her and then how she was called. And just going through the process, a number of our student storytellers and staff storytellers have agreed to reprise the evening at the Juneteenth celebration. It's a combination of Juneteenth and Arts Alive. So really excited. We're trying to encourage a couple more of our students because they are just incredibly impactful speakers, but it was a really wonderful evening and we're hoping to share some more of our student stories. But all of these were around their immigration experiences.
So it was being filmed, so if anyone wants to see it, we can make sure that you.
That would be great.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
We can make sure you
Thank you,
have
Sarah.
that.
That was so
Yeah.
disappointing.
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for that. It was wonderful. We have,
About how long were their stories?
They had to aim to be between 6 and 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So as they went through the process, many of them were between 90 seconds and 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So they had several workshops and rehearsals because it was open to any multilingual learner, grades 7 through 12. And as they developed the stories, 4 really became confident to stand out for this first event.
So all in all, how long do you think were there?
The whole evening was about an hour and 15 minutes.
No, I'm thinking just the kids, because
Oh,
it would be great if we could put them in one of our meetings. If the time frame weren't too long, we always love to see kids.
It'd be wonderful.
If they're, that's why I keep pounding away, how many minutes? I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, I think even the first student to jump up and be willing to repeat the presentation at Juneteenth might be willing to
Absolutely.
come
yeah,
in and share the story.
yeah.
Or
Very,
even
very
one
heartwarming.
student, one staff.
Or
member.
just the film of it,
It's
just,
so good.
yeah.
It's so different though, I think, to have them,
Yes.
if they're willing to come.
Yeah.
They engaged all of us. I mean, they had us laughing and then they had us on the edge of the seat all of us.
Yeah.
We'll look into that. It was a great idea.
That maybe should have been follow-ups for that, just.
It's okay. It's fine. It's great. Just also wanted to let you know that every second grader is across the district, all 4 elementary schools is also visiting the Cape Verdean Museum. And so they're just taking turns. So every Friday they've been available. So they've been going through and they've been having these really robust conversations, which has been, really nice. So if you visit, I do have to say, if you visit, they actually took a couple of the thank you cards that they got from the students and they framed them and they put it right in the entranceway because it was just been a wonderful experience on their side. As well as a great experience for our students. So I thought that was very nice. But so when you visit, look for that. They actually took their own pictures down. The board members' pictures and put up the thank you card. So, they're really good. There's just so, it really feels like we're just getting back to normal in so many ways, because there's just the art shows and the music shows, Susical's coming up. We've had, we're just full swing in the, our spring sports. We've had all sports this year. So it's just being spring and coming to the end, and there's just so many activities going on. And we'll make sure that you get a list of everything. One thing that we don't talk about a lot is that there's a spring award celebration for the career vocational technical education. It's coming up on May 3rd. I believe you have a flyer that speaks to that. But this just really is an event, celebration of the student work and recognition of the pathways completion and certification completion. So, so that's a little bit different. We'll make sure you get all the art shows and music performances and theatrical performance. I do need to mention the information that you'll see as a press release that will be posted in this Friday's paper about the tiered focus monitoring review that we're in the middle of. But Dr. Woodward, can you say just a few words about that?
Certainly.
They don't know what they're going to see.
Most certainly. So during the week of May 23rd of this year, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's Office of Public School Monitoring will be conducting the tiered focus monitoring review for the Falmouth Public Schools. So the Office of Public School Monitoring reviews each district and charter schools every 3 years to monitor compliance with federal and state special education and civil rights regulations. So the areas of reviews related to special education include student assessment, determination of eligibility, the individual education program, the IEP, the team process, the IEP development and implementation, and then the areas related to civil rights include bullying, student discipline, physical restraints, and equal access to student programs for all, school programs for all students. So those are the areas they're coming in for doing document submitting. They'll be on site the week of May 23rd, and then we will continue to update you as we get further along in the process.
And I'm just gonna do a quick reminder that our last day of school is June 29th. It seems a little early to be saying that, but I'm hoping we have no further weather-related things. But we have had 5 this year that extended it for a full week this year. And in between now and then we have 2 holidays. We have a May 30th Memorial Day, and we have the June 20th celebration of Juneteenth. So 2 long weekends, and we're going to the 29th. That's my update.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Lori? No? Okay, next on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from April 4th, 2022. There's a small revision under committee member reports. The sentence, heard Natalie Canelopoulos. The superintendent observations are due on April 20th, not evaluations, just the observations for evaluation. Any other edits to our meeting minutes of April 4th, 2022? Is there a motion to approve the minutes with that edit?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with that edit.
And is there a second? And there a second? And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And next up is to approve the revised meeting minutes from March 8th, 2022. To revision related to during in public comment, we revised the statement made by Megan Hamill. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from the revised minutes from March 8th, 2022?
I'll make that motion as well.
And second? Andrea seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, unanimous. Next, committee member reports. Any committee member reports? Oh, your hand was.
I know, I'm usually this hand,
Yeah.
sorry, I was holding my
Okay.
pen. Yes, I have 2 quick things.
Yes.
One, I just wanted to let everybody know that our voter registration drive at the high school was great. Melissa came. We also had Mary Fran Buckley and Eileen Mattingly from
League of Women Voters of Falmouth, and we had a nice little presentation. All the kids broke out their phones, which they were thrilled about, and looked up to see if they were already registered and got registered and found out where they voted and asked some really great questions. I thought I had registered when I got my driver's license. It was great. So, and thanks to Mr. Mack for helping us coordinate that. And it's nice to be back to that tradition. Very nice. And then I just wanted, we all know, but I just wanted to publicly thank and acknowledge town meeting's support of our budget.
Yes, thank you.
Which went through seamlessly. Great, really appreciate the same work, Kelly. Any other, Karen?
On Kelly mentioning the League of Women Voters tomorrow night, they're sponsoring their candidates night. And school committee has quite a few candidates this time, which is, I'm happy to see because the more people to get involved in town. Anyway, just, I encourage people to watch what the candidates have to say, selectmen and school committee members and library
I think they're
trustees.
uncontested.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
But still, they usually speak. They're invited to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, even if the school committee is uncontested, we're invited to speak.
Any other committee member reports? Just very quickly, in addition to the observations being due, please also update the subcommittee summaries. That would be very helpful for any of our new members and us as well as we configure the school committee and our subcommittees. So requests for information. Any requests for information? Okay, the last step, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'm gonna make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, everyone have a great night. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.